Alright guys, welcome back to another episode in this series. And in the last few videos we were able to look at the introduction to the concept of object-oriented programming, and I showed you a couple of things and some brief introduction. So if this is your first time here, I recommend you to check out that particular video and get yourself familiar with some definitions and some terms associated with object-oriented programming. So in this very video, I'm going to be teaching you the structure of object-oriented programming, which are classes, methods, attributes, and objects. So first of all, I'd like us to look at some definitions. What is even structure of object-oriented programming? The structure, or the anatomy, or the building blocks, whichever one you may choose to understand quick, of object-oriented programming are those concepts that actually make a program to be called an OOP program. They are seen as a paradigm, as a pathway, as a way, or as a model for us to actually relate to object-oriented programming. That is what we term the structure. It is more like when you say the structure of a human being and you begin to see things like the skull, you see the femur, you see vertebrae, you see scapula, and some other things. Just like you can see in this projection here, you can just search for structure of the human body like this, then you begin to see the skeletal frameworks of the body just like this. That same way you can relate the same ideology of this structure to the concept of structures of object-oriented programming. So these are the four basic structures of object-oriented programming. Just like I said earlier, we have classes, objects, properties, attributes, and methods. A class, this is a user-defined data type that acts as a blueprint for individual objects. And I cite some examples here. A good example of a class can be a class of a human being, a class of phones, class of cars. Basically, what you need to understand here is that a class is like a blueprint. When I say blueprint, I mean, take for instance a building plan. That plan architects draw before they follow the plan to actually erect a building. So you can see a class as that building plan that architects do draw. When they build the house, then you can now say that house is now an instance of the class, which is in our case here, which is what we have as objects. Objects are instances of a class created with specifically defined data. That is, you can see the class as maybe a diagrammatic representation of an object, maybe a sketch out, a framework of it. Then you see the object as the real life implementation of the sketch out of whatever it is. So an example here of a person name called Suleiman, which can be an example to this instance of the class human. I give another example here called iPhone 11 Pro to be an instance from this class of objects. So this class of phones here can now stand as a place where all the properties and everything that can correspond to an iPhone be defined. Then you can see this iPhone 11 Pro as the real life iPhone with its properties and method being defined in this class of phones here. The next thing is called properties attributes. These are basically variables that live inside of a class. So in a nutshell, variables are just containers that can hold anything depending on their data type. So when a variable is living outside of a class, you call it a variable, but the moment it comes into a class, You don't call it a variable again. You either call it a property or an attribute to that class. Then the last thing, which is methods. These are functions that are defined inside of a class, and they describe the behavior of the class. The function is basically a block of code that contains some parameters to be executed once they are being called upon. So still following these two examples of classes that I gave up here, a class of human and a class of iPhone, I gave two different methods to represent each one of them. So if we should create an instance from this class of human and we call that the name of that person Suleiman, then we can give that person an attribute that the person can be able to move from one place to another. So that property or that attribute we are given to that person called work is what we call a method, because all the definitions that the person needs
be able to gain motion and be able to move are well defined in this method here. The same thing to this iPhone here. It has different behaviors. It can ring when somebody call and all of that. So we can say that the ring methods or everything that is related to the phone ringing are well defined inside of this method here. So this is more like a detailed, representation of everything I've just said. So in here I have put some things to briefly illustrate what I just said. This is now the class, which is a human being, and from this class we can create an object of this image here, and maybe we can give it some kind of name, like maybe we can call it pretty girl, we can call it anything. Then we can have other attributes like the name of the person itself, her age, her email, and stuff like that can now be seen as the attribute of this image. Then we have methods like she can walk, she can be able to sit to compose email and actually send it to where it belongs. So if you are looking at this, you will get a clear picture of what the structure of object-oriented programming is. So, alright guys, thanks for watching. Please like our videos if you haven't, comment if you feel there is anything, subscribe to this channel to be able to keep getting more updates from us, and share our videos with others to make us more popular. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you.